All right. Hey, what's up, guys? Coach Mac, Play Fast Football. Glad to be here with you on Tuesday night. Doing another live Thanksgiving week. So I hope everybody's getting ready to enjoy a good holiday, a nice break. If you're a school teacher or whatever else you got going on with work, get yourself a couple days off, a nice break, enjoy the holiday, and kind of recharge the batteries a little bit. It is a busy week for us. We will be practicing all week. We are in the third round of the Florida high school football playoffs, which is the Elite Eight. In our classification, there are only 8 teams left playing football in our classification. So we are in the third round, regional final, 8 schools left. So we have practice tomorrow morning, practice Thanksgiving morning, and then obviously we will play Friday night. So we won our round 2 game last week, 36-26. So played pretty well on defense most of the night. Had a couple issues, a couple things that we struggled with. They had a really good receiver that we had to kind of figure out once the game started, and realized how thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Once we figured out how good that kid really was, we had to figure out a way to get our matchups to it. The good thing for us the other night was they really couldn't run the ball on us, which allowed us to figure out what we needed to do in coverage, allowed us to do the things in coverage we needed to do because we were solid with the guys in the box defending the run. So played pretty well most of the night. We limit explosives for the most part. Most of the night for what we had to do. Oh, appreciate it, Baz. Yeah, glad you could watch some of the Gabi game. Pretty good game for us. And again, for our program right now, it's my 3rd year there. So in the 3 years I've been there, we've won the district twice. Beat a school that we hadn't beat in 40 years 2 years ago. So that was huge. But we hadn't won a playoff game. They hadn't won a playoff game in 13 or 14 years. My head coach hadn't won a playoff game as a head coach. The last couple of years we've been getting to the playoffs and losing. So to win round 1 and then to travel out to Tallahassee and win round 2, again, make the Elite Eight is, a really big step for our program. So to be able to, go on the road 3 hours, 2.5 hours to Tallahassee, and all the things that are, all the things that go into the schedule and what kids have to do, and, getting out early and getting on a bus and then stopping and eating, stopping and doing a walkthrough, and then trying to keep it as similar to a Friday as you can to play that game. So to be able to respond like that and play pretty solid, probably made a mistake early in the game. We were winning 7-0, got them to 4th down. They struggled. Their snapper struggles a little bit. So we felt like we could get to a punt. Ball was probably on their 40-yard line. So, closer to midfield. Probably should have went safer with a return look, but went after it, got the exact look we wanted, got everything we wanted drawn up, and just missed it. Took a poor angle, didn't get through the block point, and kind of got knocked into the kicker a little bit and gave them the ball back, and they scored a touchdown. But, the rest of the night where it needed to be, our offense played well. And then we struggled with about 1 minute and 30 seconds left in the half. We skied a kick and we didn't cover it properly. So, probably a situation where a little bit too much information was given throughout the week, based on how they returned kicks and what they were trying to do. And, we had a guy that needed to front up the ball and, work to front up the ball, and we skied it into the boundary. And, he went to the field side of the returner because we preached all week that they were going to try and take some of those boundary kicks back to the field. And he was supposed to head the returner up, and he went field side. And so, that hurt us a little bit. And then, we missed a tackle from an unblocked guy. And then our safeties, you try to form a net with the back 3. I've done a video on kickoff coverage and how we do it, and then a couple short videos talking about, what the issues are in kickoff coverage. And this wasn't the usual issue. The usual issue with kickoff coverage is you get too many guys into the boundary underneath the numbers. So a lot of times when you watch kick returns or you watch people struggle with kickoff coverage, you end up with like 3 bodies under the numbers into the boundary. and that's usually one of the issues, or you get caught on the same level. Um, and that really wasn't the issue for us. We didn't have guys trapped under the boundary. Actually, the guy that was supposed to head up the ball went to the field. And then, we had a guy at the second level of what we would call kind of the fold players, that missed the tackle. And then the third level, for us is the safety net with two safeties and the kicker. And we didn't funnel and vice the ball properly to the kicker, and we didn't get the guy on the ground. And, we had a 9-point lead with a minute and a half left. And all you got to do is, kind of sky kick it, get it to where you want it to, get a guy on the ground, and then just play defense for a minute and get to halftime with a 9-point lead. But, we responded back from that. We gave up the lead early in the third quarter, and then the offense responded, and then we responded with like 3 or 4 really solid drives where we got off the field and were able to build a 10-point lead. So, a pretty solid game all the way around. Going to have to change to 3-4 next year based on personnel from 3-high system I've run for the last 2 years. How are you playing your over front? Does Jack travel to the field? No, so we play tight front, and our jack is away from the nickel. So our nickel sets it to the passing strength, and the jack goes away from that. So, it's tight front with a fourth rusher weak. It looks more like under than it does over. And then when we do play 4 down, we're actually an under front team, not an over front team. So we've done some things throughout the year with where we set the jack. We've set them to the field versus some teams. We've set them to the back a couple times versus some teams, but camp rules pretty much 90% of the time we play, it's mint front and the jack goes away from the nickel. And then we play all of our split field coverages and our 3 deep coverages behind it. And then our blitz package, which is, the usual for us. So the biggest adjustment for us, Baz, to be honest with you, from 3 high was how we play 3-by-1. Because we're playing with more of a true Sam linebacker on the field instead of 3 safeties. So we're actually playing with 2.5 safeties, or more like 2 safeties, because we don't ask the Sam linebacker to play any of our traditional 3-by-1 deals. We don't ask him to carry vertical. So a lot more poach, steal, whatever you want to call it, borrowing the backside safety, to the front side of trips. And, I don't like the matchup one-on-one to the single. We're better at corner than we've been, but there's still, in Florida, there's enough dudes to the single that are going to beat you. So we've got to carry some answers to handle the single receiver when we're borrowing the backside safety. But one thing about the min front that's been really good to us is the run game back to the single, where people, anytime if you were a 4-2-5 team, or anytime you played poach, steal, or, triangle, whatever you want to call the coverage, when you borrow the backside safety to play 3 vertical, runs to the single become a little bit of an issue. And for us with the min front stuff, when it's tight with the jack off the weak side, that's been, a pretty good saving grace for us, the single side runs, because they got to account for the jack coming off the edge. So, it's been something that's helped us. And then like I said, we've had some game plan deals where we try to move the jack around so he's not always in the same spot. But, 90% of the time, our base defense, when we play our best, it's the jack set away from the nickel. So it looks, it's tight front, but it looks more like under or reduction in a way. So, and it's been good to us this year. Obviously, we made the switch from 3 high because of personnel reasons and because of some of the things we felt like we had to defend. And, if you're going to make it to the 3rd round and go to the Elite 8, obviously it worked for us, right? So we can't say that it didn't work. I did talk today. I did a YouTube short video talking about 3 high coverage variations and why I like it so much. I think, as far as making an offensive coordinator work and making a quarterback work, I think 3 high puts you in a situation to vary your coverages a lot more, not only in the 3-by-1 world, but, any 2-by-1, 2-by-2, some of that stuff that the middle safety kind of becomes a guy where you can rotate the 3 deep a lot of different ways. It's inherently built to play Tampa 2 rather naturally. So, I still love the coverage variations of 3 high. And again, the difference between 3 high and 3 safety defense is, a lot of teams have been playing nickel as a base for a long time now. And that 3rd safety, though, is usually a guy that's down. He's kind of that hybrid nickel Sam linebacker. He's a guy that you can play in 3-by-1 coverages, but he's down more than he's on the roof. So when you're 3 high safety, you're literally playing with 3 guys that are high, hash mark, third level players. So I think anytime, it's like any defensive theory. The more back end guys you have, the more multiple you can be with some things, whether it's pressures or coverages. Um, so obviously as a 3-4 team, you can be a little bit more multiple maybe than a 4-down team. And then when you add, when we were 3-3-5 or tight 3 high, Iowa State stuff, now you've got 5 back end players. So anytime you have more players on the back end, I think you can be more multiple within your coverages. Obviously, the scenarios you run into are, can you defend the run from that light box, and can you defend the run with more third level players? And that's going to be everybody's. That'll be what scares everybody from playing the coverages, especially to 11, 12, 21, things like that, where now you're trying to fit runs from the third level, and you're trying to fit runs with 3 high safeties. Now, again, when you think about that, that doesn't mean they're all high all the time, right? We have our same split field coverages, our same rotations. We sky the weak side. We can buzz the front side. So it's not like they're all high all the time, but, personnel wise, they're built to be 3 high safeties. The middle safety is more of a hybrid, safety nickel type, or somebody that can fit runs and play coverages. But that, to me, from a coverage standpoint, there's way more variation in the coverage structure of things you want to do. So, if I had the personnel to do it, and had, next year will be interesting because we return 8 players on defense. So, at least 8 guys. Actually, we return like 15 or 16 because we rotate 8 or 9 different underclassmen up front. We're a little bit smaller this year. Obviously, in the offseason, we have a chance to get bigger and lift, but we're playing a freshman up front. We're playing 4 or 5 sophomores up front. So, to make it to the third round in the regional final with 8 guys that are going to come back on defense, and, probably multiple D linemen in the rotation playing right now. I think we lose 1 D lineman from the group that we have right now. We only lose 1 D lineman of the 8 or 9 that we're using in the rotation. So in the grand scheme of things, we probably bring back 14, 15 guys that are playing a lot of defense for us. And, that helped us get to the third round. So, I think next year, when you think about that, obviously every playoff game is more experience. So now we're going to have kids that have, right now they've got 12 games under their belt. They're going to get a 13th game under their belt this week. So, going into the offseason and then going into next year, I think we depending upon personnel, I think when we live in a world where now we might be able to carry 3 high as a package that we want to use at certain times with certain body types, and add that to our base 3-4 package. Obviously with most of that personnel returning, I think it would be, with the success we've had, I think it would probably be stupid to change. I think every year you need to wrinkle and you need to adapt and adjust a little bit, especially for us. We catch the same schedule again next year. You just flip home and away. So, if you're going to play the same teams again, I think you have to have some variation in there. But at the same time, when you look at it, if you change to a defensive structure and you end up playing 12 or 13 football games and you're in the Elite 8 of your classification, you'd probably be stupid to change from that. So I'd like to get to a world where 3 high was a package for us. Not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily a third down deal, but a package that we could play at times versus 10, 11, personnel groups that we think we match up with, to where we can kind of change some of the things we're doing and carry, similar philosophies from tight front, but, a couple different run fit scenarios for the offense when you're fitting with the middle safety and how they're going to block certain things. So, if I had the group to do it, the personnel to do it, and kids that understood what we were doing, I would love to carry both. And you start as an odd front team anyways, so you're already a 3-4 team. If you have a guy that you can sub in, for us, the issue becomes more who we would sub out. I think we have a kid that can handle playing middle safety right now. I don't think that's the issue, but right now with the group that we have, we would probably sub out one of our better players, and I don't really want to do that right now. So, I don't want to sub. Our two inside linebackers are really good players. They're both juniors. Our 3-4 week jack linebacker's a junior. So I don't really want to sub those guys out. The move for us would probably be, especially next year with another year in the offseason, I think the move for us would be sliding the jack down to play maybe a 5 technique, or maybe he could play a 4-eye. But to keep the best kids on the field, the move would be taking a D lineman out and bringing a middle safety in, and then maybe sliding the jack down, to be a D line body, whether we would have to shade the front and let him play a 5 technique and see if we can fit it with the light box that way. Maybe with a shade 5 and a 4-eye on the backside, or if he could play, in a simplistic, if he in a simplistic world, if he could play in a situation where he could be a 4-eyed and do the things we ask him to do, that would be ideal for us. Hey, appreciate that. You did not have to do that. Thank you so much. I think any of you guys that have ever played for me, I think probably to a fault. A lot of the times I've always been a player's coach. That's always what I've tried to be. Obviously as a player's coach, it's not, to me, being a player's coach doesn't mean you let kids do whatever they want when they want. There's still discipline, there's still accountability, but I've always been someone that's tried to relate to players. I've tried to have a relationship with guys that, making sure they understand that I did it in high school. I did it at a smaller level in college, but all the things I'm asking them to do, I've done. I've been in their shoes. So, when you set things up that way, and then, you develop relationships with people, I think you can get kids to play harder for you and get them to understand what you're trying to do. And I've now been at 4 different high schools and a head coach at 3, a defensive coordinator at 1. And I've got guys from, from every school I've ever coached at, that reach out. And, it's a tough business. You're not going to please everybody. Obviously, you've got guys who thought maybe they should have played more, or, maybe they should have played a different position. But, at the end of the day, it's always one of those things where, I've appreciated everybody that's ever played for me, and, developed good relationship with kids. So, so glad that you could be here tonight, Malcolm. Appreciate you playing for me and doing the things that I asked you to do. And obviously the donation tonight is extremely grateful on your part, and appreciate it. And let's get back to the chat. Let's get back to doing it. So, again, it's a unique challenge this week. We're playing one of the best teams in the state, currently 11-0. A lot of really, really good players. They're scoring 45 points a game, so I've got my hands full. But when you get to this point in the season and you get to the 3rd round, you've got to accept those challenges, right? There are no bad teams left. Everybody's going to be well coached. Everybody's going to have solid schemes. Everybody's going to have really good players. So, that part of it, you love to see. Terradome, welcome here, bud. That part of it you love to see. Obviously, the matchup is challenging, but it's one of those things as a coach that you appreciate, you enjoy. I've always functioned better as a player and a coach when people think that we're not supposed to do what we're supposed to do. Never really liked being babied as a player. Never really liked, it's nice for people to recognize what you do. It's nice for people to talk good about the things that you do. But, going back to the old Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin rat poison comment, for me as a coach and a player, I'm better when the challenge is there. I'm better when I'm not supposed to be doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. It puts a little bit of an extra chip on your shoulder, I think. So I think I function better in those settings. I think I coach better in those settings. But again, we talked about it last week, and one of the things as a coordinator on either side of the ball, especially on defense, is you can't get overwhelmed with how good somebody is. That's actually Joey Delgay is actually one of my coaches in my career in college, and almost got him fired on several occasions. but we made it through somehow. So, um, it's one of those deals where when you're playing somebody really good, you can't get overwhelmed with how good they are and try to game plan um, something that I think coaching wise, I think we all have the same fault. When you're playing really good teams and really talented teams, and um, you feel like you're going to need something extra. I think sometimes we over game plan everything, and we try to play the game on paper, and maybe it's slight egotistical, maybe it's egocentric, however you want to look at it. Um, I think as a coach, you think you can dictate the game on paper with adjustments, and I think you feel like you can dictate the game with wrinkles. But the one thing I've learned doing this so long is the more we struggle, the more we've got to get back to basics and doing the things that we know how to do. So, um, the game plan this week has to be good enough to defend what we need to defend, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be, so exotic that our kids freak out and can't play. Right? I like I said, I've learned my lesson through all the years of doing, coaching 170, 180 football games and playoff games and championship games and third round. This is my second time, I think, in the third round. So, I think you as you get older, you start to learn. Don't take the game out of the kids' hands and try to put it in your hands. Obviously, you get film. You look at film. You know how good teams are. Obviously, this team is in our area, so we know how good they are, right? They're 15, 20 minutes down the road. We know what they did all year. We know how good they are. We know how talented they are. We know where all the guys are going to college. We know what their stars and their rankings are. And, but when you take all that information and, you throw it into a blender to say, all right, look, what we did all year to get here isn't good enough. We've got to do all these other things. And you've got, it's not like it's a Super Bowl. We don't have 2 weeks. We've got 3.5 days. We're a split practice team. We split practice on offense and defense. So, you're talking about maybe on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe 7 or 8 defensive periods, talking about 35, 40 minutes of defense in 3 days. So what are you really going to be able to get done that's, that exotic or that different? Now, I think the good thing for us is the way we play split field coverage world, quarters toolbox. I think we have a lot of variations in coverage that we can play to change things up, on either side, passing strength side, away strength side. And with those variations, I think we're now able to go in and, go back and say, all right, look, let's wrinkle this the way we need to wrinkle it, right? Let's go ahead and make it, where we're playing some combinations we haven't played before, right? Or we're playing some things a little bit different than we have in the past, but all things that are in our toolbox. So they're not new for the kids, especially up front. Like I said, we're playing a lot of young guys up front. We're rotating 8 or 10 guys. The last thing I want to do is freak them out, when you're playing a really good football team. So got to let the guys up front get after it, give them a chance to be successful. Really didn't change any pressures. So when and where we pressure is probably a philosophical change, but didn't add any pressures, didn't draw up any new pressures, made 1 or 2 wrinkles to our third down package. But at the end of the day, I think you've got to get into scenarios like this and say, all right, look, how did we get here? What did we do to get here? And I think that's on both sides of the ball. Obviously, I don't have to worry about offense. That's right now not my job description. So, I just have to worry about defense and the special teams that I coordinate. But I think you still have to go back and say, all right, look, how did we get here? All right, what did we do to get here? What things did we do well to get here? Come on, Spice. What things did we do really well to get here? How can we play fast, physical, aggressive, and then take the things that are in the system and make your tweaks to it to say, okay, look, all right, here's some game plan stuff. So it's not like there's, it's not a game plan. It's just not a game plan in which we felt like we needed to get crazy exotic, to kind of dial it up to say, all right, look, we're going to have to do all these things to stop a really good team. I think we have to play to our strengths. I think we have to exploit any weaknesses that they might have. They don't have many. But I think we've got to figure out what those are. Obviously, in any game like this, when you're playing a really good opponent, you probably need to steal a possession somewhere. And I think that goes for any game, right? I don't think a coach would ever say, hey, we don't want to steal a possession. So special teams wise, obviously, if we can get them to punt, we got to end with the ball. If when they kick off, we got to end with the ball. If we can get them into situations where they have to punt, I think we have to have at least one way that we can aggressively get after, the punt protection and see if we can get home. I think we've also got to be able to play, some safer looks or return looks. My philosophy in high school football is I don't set up a ton of returns. In the punt world, simply because week to week, the operating times and the punts and the punters that you're seeing, when guys work in college and the NFL, they know exactly where the ball is going to be punted most of the time, how long it's going to be in the air, how long they have the set returns up. And, we're dealing with week to week punters that are positional players, maybe not true punters, guys that are playing offense or defense and then having to come in and punt. And so you don't get a lot of clean looks. You don't get a lot of 45, 50-yard punts that, are going to be hit in an area where they're going to be and where you want to set the return up. So, to me, I kind of look at it from a time efficiency manner. And I say to myself, all right, look, if I'm going to take time out of our practice to set these returns up, are they going to be, worth their investment? Is there going to be an ROI on setting a return look up if I can't get a punt that's punted where I need it? If I'm getting punts that are shanked or punts that are, line drive punts or whatever it may be. If I don't know that I can get the exact punt look, then do I take the limited time that I have in punt block and work blocks and returns because we don't have enough time? So my philosophy has always been, I want to be more aggressive in the block side of things and not the return side. And, when you do that, you've got to make sure, if you are, like I said last week, it actually hurt us. We went after a punt and got a roughing call and extended a drive for a team that, got them back in the game when we were winning 7-0. So, that's I think schematically, people talk football all the time about X's and O's and schematics, but I think there's a philosophical side to it that kind of plays into everything you're doing, right? We all have different philosophies of things we want to do. And, but I do think, at least for me, I think your special team should match your offense and defensive philosophy. Obviously based on personnel, right? Based on the type of kicker you have, the type of punter you have, the type of skills that you have. But, if you're a little bit different on the offense or the defensive side of the ball, or, you do things a little bit differently, well, then, you may want to be a little bit different in special teams because, by being slightly different or, being slightly exotic in some phases, that's more time the other team has to spend preparing for those things, right? So one of the greatest things about getting after punts is if you get after punts, they have to protect. They have to work on protection. Now, if you get after punts enough, there's going to be fakes and things. We've had, 13 games. We had one punt faked on us successfully. So you've got to go back and self-scout all your looks and where you're sending your block guys from and the bodies that you're using out there. And can they dial in what you're doing? Obviously, we don't carry the same block every week. We change the block based on the scheme that we're seeing, how teams protect it. But, we're constantly trying to wrinkle from week to week the look because other teams have film too, right? So if you come with the same block, not only can they protect it, but they can figure out where their fakes are. So, to me, there's 3 phases in the game. And I know we're limited in our time in high school football. Like I said, we're a split practice squad. So, our offense and our defensive time is limited enough. When you then throw special teams in there, you kind of get to a point where, you just run out of time to do everything. So, but I will say that I think, if you match your philosophy on special teams to your offense and defense, right? So be a little bit different on the punt side, right? Do something that people don't see a lot. Um, One of the things that's been really good to us this year is, uh, you know, using a motion player in the punt game, making people align to that formation and then changing the eligibles into formation and motioning guys that they have to account for because those guys are eligible. But then there are also guys that, allow you to change up how you're covering punts. So they got to figure out in their returns how they're going to get it blocked up. And, um, so things like that make it a little bit more difficult on the other team, right? I think when you get into the kickoff return world, it's tougher to be exotic. There's only so many ways to cover kicks. I think, in the kicking world, the best thing to do is kick it out of the back of the end zone if you have that guy, but we don't all have that guy. So, when you start to work coverage, you got to figure out how you can cover and how your guys can cover, and you got to have a plan, and you got to figure out how many speed guys you want to use and how many fold guys you want to use, and how you're going to create 3 levels to the kickoff coverage, almost like a defense where, there's the first level of speed guys trying to make plays, and then there's a second level of fold guys that are reacting to blocks. And, you've got to spend a ton of time talking to your guys about the speed zone and butt side avoid on the first level. And, then you got to talk to guys as we progress down the field and get closer to the returner. Now we're in that decision area where we can't go around blocks anymore. We've got to, button press or shock and shed blocks. And so we break those into circuits and we do them all the time. And we make all our kickoff coverage guys do it. And they got to learn how to butt side avoid in the speed zone. Then they got to learn how to shock and shed. And, we got to learn how to fold. We got to learn how to vice the ball and, do all those things that in kickoff coverage, those are the fundamentals, right? It's with the rules, it's hard to get exotic formationally on kickoffs. You can stack guys and change lanes and, change who the safety is every week and where he lines up. I think there's certain things you can do that help, but kickoff is kind of tough to be exotic. So, I look at punt formation stuff. I look at extra point field goal, muddle huddle situations where you can be exotic. And, it may not always come down to the extra point that you're getting. If you go for 2 from muddle huddle or something like that, what it comes down to is the time the other team has to spend working on some of your special teams so that it takes time away from their offense and defense, right? So, if you put stuff out there that's different that people have to look at, now they got to defend it. They have the same amount of practice time as you do. Some of the teams we play are at an advantage because their offense, defense separate. So their offense and defense gets more time during the week. But that is what it is, right? That's our roster. That's the way we play. So, it's always trying to cut time into their game plan. Not only when you're doing stuff that's different, it's not so much, the stuff being different. That is always the thing that provides the edge. When you're doing stuff that's a little bit different, I think you make teams prepare differently. So you try to affect that comfort level of how they practice and what time they have. And, yeah, Admiral, it's the same thing. So if you're a muddle huddle or if you've got all these crazy formations that you can line up in and you've got a couple plays you can run or you can just shift and kick, they have to spend time defending those. They have to spend time getting lined up to them. Normally what happens is when you do that, they spend so much time getting lined up that when you actually shift to kick it, they don't rush or they don't have a great block plan because it's hard to get kids to line up, shift, and then go back to their block. But if you did those things and the 2-point plays never presented themselves and they lined up to all those formations and you just kicked extra points all night, I still think you're successful from the standpoint of taking time out of their practice plan to make sure that they defend it. So when you're talking on the offensive side of the ball, it's like a couple exotic formations, shifts, trades, motions, things that make the defense spend more time aligning and adjusting to that than they do fitting power, counter, zone read, or playing coverages behind it, right? So the more exotic, different you can be, you're not just doing it from an X's and O's standpoint, you're doing it from the philosophy of making other teams spend time to prepare. So, and again, for me, philosophically, that's always been from the standpoint of, having some really good football teams that I've coached. but I've never really felt like week in and week out when we get off the bus, we're that dominant. We've had a lot of really good football teams at the places I've been. Um, we've been 9-1, we've been 8-2, we've been 7-3. We've been on the other end of the spectrum too. Now I've been 1-9, I've been 3-7. So I've kind of seen all of it. But you know, year to year, there's weeks where you're better than people, no doubt about it. But for the most part, it's been situations where, you know, we're the team that's got to work, we're the team that's got to prepare, we're the team that's got to be different. Um, so when you're that team, you've got to find ways to affect what the other team's doing in their game planning. You got to find ways to affect what they're doing in their practice. Um, because sometimes in high school, the off the bus rule is so different. I know there's been a lot of really good college games this year. Obviously, I'm an Alabama fan. They've lost 3 times. They lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Oklahoma, 2 games that nobody thinks they should lose. But in those scenarios, the college rosters are still way closer than a lot of the scenarios that present themselves in high school when you have an extreme underdog. So I think it's tougher on our end at the high school level to pull off that type of upset than it is at the Division I level. And when that happens, you've got to figure out the ways that you're going to pull that off, right? So, and again, those are just little, all the years, various experience, different games, different plans, everything that, that to me is when you have experience in the game and you have coaches that are experienced on your side. That's when you find the value in doing some things behind the scenes that are going to help your team win the game that maybe never really show up to the average fan. Things that, like I said, taking time, making people prepare for different things on specials, making people prepare for different things on offense and defense, and, trying to be as different as you can, right? On defense for us, it's tight front's been kind of a saving grace for us the last couple of years. I still think it's different enough that it affects rules on base run plays, on pass protection. Obviously, it allows us to play a version of football that's best for us. Taking away interior gaps and trying to make the ball go east and west, and not having to, when you look at it from a time standpoint, for us, one of the biggest things is we save a ton of time not having to work as much on spilling the ball, with 5 techniques, or, if you're a traditional 4-down team and you're going to try and spill the ball to get it to go east and west and deny vertical entry. That's a technique and a block recognition that takes a lot of time. And when you're primarily tight front the way we are, there aren't as many scenarios where you have to worry about that. You'll get some inside trap stuff where they'll trap the 4-eye, and obviously you got to work on how you want to fit those things, but you don't have to, spend as much time worrying about, all right, the 5 techniques got to spill. We're fitting the linebackers for the ball to be spilled. If the ball doesn't get spilled, we're going to be in trouble. So just little things like that to me, that not only help you play, defense, but they help from an efficiency standpoint of where you can get your reps in. I've talked several times about our 3 deep stuff and how our 3 deep stuff is more country cover 3 than it is, matching cover 3. There's a lot of good teams, Terradome, that don't spill. There's a lot of good teams that box the ball or dent the ball. So, you don't have to spill. There's nothing. Again, the great thing about football is there's several ways to get things done. So, there's nothing said out there that says you have to spill the ball. But teams that do choose to spill the ball, that's a technique that you're going to have to work on. I think most people would agree that whatever structure you're playing, if you had D linemen that could play more aggressive and get up the field and get off the ball, if you could be successful that way, then again, that's going to be more time efficient because there's less skills for those guys to have to develop. Now your fits behind it have to change. So obviously, how you play your backers and how you fit things if you're boxing or, you're playing with ends that are more of a jet technique up the field. But again, that's different enough to where you're taking away different read game aspects. And, For the longest time, one of the things I talked about is how, in the NFL, guys that are getting paid to rush the passer aren't always the greatest spill players, right? But if they're in a wide nine, rushing the passer and you know where they're going to be, it's very hard to run the ball outside on those teams. It's very hard to get the ball to the perimeter. And, that's why in the NFL, a lot of times, the outside runs, the better versions may be wide zone, versions that can go back under, and not just a straight. You will see pin pull in the NFL. Obviously, there are perimeter plays. I get it. But, when you're dealing with ends that are wide and they're athletes that are up the field, it's kind of hard to get the ball around them. So now you've got to figure out your game plan to attack, those types of defenses. But they also have to figure out how they're going to fit runs, right? Because if they're not spilling it based on angles and down blocks and who can get the backers, obviously they have to figure out how they want to fit those things. So, I don't think you don't necessarily have to spill. You don't have to play defense that way. You can play it however you feel comfortable playing. But I know for us, we've always had to try and be a spill team when we were a 4-down team. And we tried to eliminate vertical entry, and we tried to get the ball to go east and west. And then we tried to get the backers to fit and send the ball to free hitters, overhangs, or quarter safeties, whatever it may be. So the tight front deal for us, even the way we play it this year from more mint front with a fourth rusher from the weak side, it's still tight with 2-4 eyes and a nose. And, I think for us, it kind of defines the blocks we're going to see. Teams that are gap scheme teams versus our front traditionally block everything down or back. Because if they, now if they're a G scheme team and they feel like they can get the 4-eye cut off with the tackle, obviously if they can cut the 4-eye off with the tackle, now they can get the double on the nose. They can get their rules where they want them. I still think you get more solos on the 4-eye front side if the front side guard's got to double the nose. But, like GT teams usually have to go all the way back with the center to the 4-eye, and then you get 3 solo blocks. So if you've got good defensive linemen, anytime you can get 3 solo blocks, I think it's good. I think you can keep guys off your linebackers. But now you got to know how you fit things, right? Because they might get 2 pullers if you don't have a spiller and you don't have an edge player. So like for us to the side of the nickel, if we get gap schemes to the side of the nickel, a lot of times the pullers are going to get outside to be able to wrap. So now we've got to talk to our backers about how you're fitting, what you're fitting, where you're fitting, how you're going to spill pullers and get the ball to spill even wider. If you've got a backside backer, that might have to be, jump over player based on pull schemes. If the front side backer is going to spill it, then he might, need to be a jump over guy. And, but that's all scheme for scheme, coach for coach, that it's all within the scheme of how you teach it and what you're trying to get done. Right. So you don't have to do it one way. There's no set way to do it, but you just have to understand the way you're doing it has to fit for everybody on the defense. I would tendency wise, I would go through all the runs and find out how many false pulls there are, Admiral, and figure out if there are false pulls in there. Is there a better way for us to read? Can we read through the mesh? Does the backfield action tell us anything? Can you possibly get reads off the center on the false pull stuff? If it's truly guards that are false pulling you, then obviously you can't have your backers reading guards that week. You got to tie how you're going to play some of the D linemen to some of those things as well. It's the same thing with front side gap schemes. When we were an even front team and we played with the 3 technique, to what we thought was the strength, and we had a 2-eye backside. Anytime the center would block back, you've got to determine how fast are you going to run the linebackers, and do you want to hump over the top of the back blocks with those guys, or do you want to try and get skinny? Because if you've got a backside backer on a power scheme, if you got a backside backer that's running really fast with pullers, now when they block back on the 2-eye, if you jump over the top of that block and run with the backer, now you get some issues on the backside of things. You're going to have to fold it with some players. And, so I think when it comes down to run fits, I think, having to tie how the D-line plays certain blocks with how the linebackers play certain blocks. When we were a 3-high team, we had to tie the middle safeties fits into the backers so that we didn't end up with all 3 players over the top of certain runs. There were times we had to play the middle safety behind the backers if the backers were going to run. There were times where we played some GT bash schemes and read schemes, and we had to fit the middle safety opposite the backers if we wanted the backers to run really fast with the pullers. I might have had to play the middle safety behind them. Um, so all those things go into, again, your philosophy, how you want to fit runs, the runs that you need to fit. Um, but the tough thing on defense is I don't think you can defend everything. Um, I don't think there's a magic bullet that defends everything. I think you have to have enough answers in your scheme that can take care of the problems that present themselves. The way I approach it is I need to have answers every week for the new things that they're trying or the wrinkles that they're trying so that I can get them back to playing football the way they normally play football. Um, one of the things I talked about on a video was how most coaches in general will always go back to what they do and what they know. I think every week guys have wrinkles and nuances. But again, with the short amount of time we have for practice, it's very hard for teams to carry a whole new arsenal of things that they can do. So, what ends up happening, in at least in my opinion, is every week you're going to get wrinkles and you're going to get nuances. And if you can defend those, then you can get back to a team doing the things that they do, especially in critical games, critical situations. I think guys are always going to go back. Offenses are going to think players, not plays, are going to try to get the ball to their best dudes. And, they're going to do the things that they do regularly, on an everyday basis. And that's, again, that's part of the coaching. That's part of the chess game that you're playing every week. All right, what are the wrinkles? What are the nuances? What do we need to do to defend those? And a lot of times you don't know until in game, right? Like, you have film, you have everything you think, you have the matchup that you think where they're going to try and exploit you, where they've exploited teams in the past, but you're not there all week with that team. You don't know what their wrinkles are going to be. But if you can answer the wrinkles early and the nuances early, then I think eventually those teams will settle down into what they do. Right. So the way I look at it is, who do they want to be? Who do they need to be? Week to week, it's what do they want to do? And then what do they actually need to do? Right. So, the wrinkles and the nuances are the things that they would like to do, the things that they want to do. And then after those wrinkles and nuances are out, they're eventually going to go back to doing the things that they need to do, the things that they know how to do. Right. So, and again, as you get later in the season, the thing that becomes tough is you end up with 8 to 10 games on people. I think sometimes it's easier to defend teams when you only have 2 films. Um, I think you get to their bread and butter a lot quicker. You defend the things that they do well. When you get 8 to 10 films on people, you start to get into this world where you've watched so much that it's like paralysis by analysis. 8 weeks ago, they ran this formation. Haven't seen it since. Is it going to come out again? 8 weeks ago, they ran this shift trader motion. Is that going to come out again? So, I think that's what makes it interesting. It's what makes it fun. Week to week, there are those nuances and wrinkles. So, and that's at every level. I think the colleges have to deal with it. NFL teams have to deal with it. I think they deal with it less than we do. Because from any given week, we may go from a game plan. I got a buddy of mine in New York that's getting ready for his week 1 next year. Their season's over and he's starting to do his work against the schedule. And the week 1 team's going to be single wing. All right. Well, now you got to defend single wing. The very next week, you might defend, a spread or air raid or West Coast. And the next week you might defend 32 or 22 or, downhill run game, whatever it may be. So I think there's way more variation in high school offenses than college and NFL guys see. So I think sometimes our job is tougher, but it's the same for them too, right? Every week a team's going to come out with a plan and you've got to be able to answer, the wrinkles and the nuances. And then once you answer that, I think they get back to, doing the things that they know how to do. The other interesting thing sometimes is if you have enough in your package to carry to where you can almost have 2 game plans, so you enter the game with one style and one philosophy. And then if you get to halftime and the game's still in a balance, you might be able to switch it up on teams. So whether that's going from 3 down to 4 down, whether that's going from 2 high to 1 high, whether that's going from less pressure to more pressure, just different ways you can kind of change things up. Because when you get to halftime, everybody's going to make halftime adjustments. And once you get to halftime, the halftime adjustments are not going to be off of 10 films. They're going to be off of what just happened in the first half, right? So, as a defense, if you have the ability to carry some different things and you get to halftime with a game in a balance, I think you can get yourself into a situation where now, in the second half, you might have a slightly different plan of attack or a slightly different, philosophy of how you're going to defend things, because that's how you can keep teams off balance, right? And again, you can only do those things when you have kids that have played a bunch, when you have a coaching staff that's been with you a little bit. You can't do all those things if you're at a new school or the kids haven't played a ton of football. You got to do the things that you can do to compete. So one of the things I mention all the time on videos and when we talk about coaching is, just because there's all these different things out there, that doesn't mean you have to do them all, right? So, there's weeks where we don't play certain things. There's weeks where we don't carry certain things. Like, you can't do all of that all the time. You can't do everything that you see at a clinic. You can't do everything that you see on a college visit you go to, or or if you visit another high school and talk to people. You can't do all those things. You can take some of the knowledge and some of the finer points of it and apply it to what you do. But at the end of the day, you can't do all of it, right? So just because you see something, like something, think it might be interesting, especially in the world we live in now with so many things on social media with how teams are doing things. It's like, you see so many good things out there. That's like, man, I'd love to put that in. Oh, can you carry it? Can your kids do it? Does it fit what you do? Does it fit how you do it? Does it fit how you teach it? So I think as a coach, sometimes you've got to be able to take the information that you're getting, and you've got to be able to determine, can we use that? Can we carry that? Can we play that? Everything that's a good theory doesn't mean it's good for you. And that's the hardest part, I think, in our business, or one of the hardest parts is we want to study, we want to learn, we want to get better. But at some point, there's too much information. At some point, you're doing too many things. So you got to fit your personnel. You've got to fit your style of play. You got to fit your philosophy. And, you can get so caught up on Twitter or, Instagram, YouTube, social media. You can get so caught up looking at all these different things that guys are doing. And sometimes when you're either struggling a little bit or you're reaching for straws against a certain style of play, and all of a sudden you see something pop up on your Twitter feed that's how a team defended something, it's so easy to buy into that and go, yeah, we're going to do that. Or, you see a certain pressure or a certain third down look that guys are talking about in college. Well, do we have the time to do that? Can our players handle those skills, those techniques? Can we afford? Is our game the same, right? So, if you're listening to college guys talk about defending 3rd and 6 plus, and they're getting into all these exotic sims and creepers and different looks, well, 3rd and 6 in high school might be trap. 3rd and 6 in high school might be ISO. Are all those things good against all the things that you might see in high school, right? They might be really good for them because 3rd and 6 in their world, is 90% something, or 3rd and 6 with a certain personnel group on the field is 90% this. And, for us, you get into a world where it's like, all right, 3rd and 6, I don't know how comfortable I am with that, because it might be quarterback run, it might be trap, it might be buck sweep, it might be whatever, So that's the thing that, information is great. It's a great tool. And I think every coach has to decipher what you can use, what you can't use, what your kids can do, what they can't do, and kind of figure out where it all fits, right? So that's kind of where we are right now. We've got a game plan. I like the plan. I like what we're trying to do versus the things that we need to defend. With any game plan, you won't know until Friday, right? I think that's the toughest part to me about coaching football, at least, is there's always going to be 6 to 7 days between games, and there's always going to be film and preparation. And, a lot of the times, it comes down to when you are preparing and when you're doing those things, all the downtime, all the free time is when all the demons kind of creep in your head, right? So you're thinking about your scheme and where your scheme might be deficient if they do certain things. And, then once the game comes, that to me is a little bit more the easier part. Now it's, hey, here's what's happening. Here's what we got to defend. Here's how we need to defend it. And a lot of the what ifs kind of go out the window, because now all of a sudden the scenarios are showing up right in front of you, right? The Monday to Thursday is the toughest part for any coach or coordinator, because, you got all this film and all these things that you think might happen. And if they do happen, versus this, and this, how are we going to handle that? So a lot of times that time leading up in football is what makes it tough. You get, if you play basketball and you go out and you play a bad game, you might play the next night. Well, you don't have much time to wrinkle and adjust anything. You've just got to do what you do better, and you got to fix the mistakes. And football with 5 and 6 days in between, and sometimes bye weeks and things like that. Like, time isn't always your friend. Sometimes it can be an enemy. And in the coaching world, there's too much time. There's too much downtime. There's too much time to think. There's too much time to rack your brain around what you can do, what you can't do, what's going to work, what's not going to work. And then all of a sudden Friday night comes, and all the stress leading up to it kind of sometimes at 7:00 disappears, because now it's like, all right, look, here's what we're seeing. Here's what they're doing. Here's what we need to do. Here's what we need to fix. So that's, again, the part of the chess game, part of the cat and mouse game all week. What might they do? What do you think they're going to do? You look at their film, you look at their team, you look at their kids. Here's what I think they're probably going to try and do. And, you put together a plan, and you hope the plan in its base roots is solid enough to put you in a position to win. And that's on offense, that's on defense, that's on special teams, right? And you just, at the end of the day, you've got to have a base. You've got to have a system that you can trust and things that you can do. And, you can't rely on wrinkles all the time. You can't rely on game plans all the time. That's a tough way to live week to week. Obviously, like I said, there's going to be matchups where you need to be different. And there's going to be matchups where you have to install or add some things in off of what you already do to give yourself a competitive advantage. But I think, to me, in coaching and experience, where do I draw the line of what's enough, what's too much, what's needed, what's not needed, right? And I don't think, there is no black and white in that scenario. It's almost all gray area in that scenario, because you're never going to know. To me, I always judge it off of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday practice. If we have things in and we can't do them on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then you got to cut back. You got to get out, right? And here's in the coaching world, here's a good philosophy. Mondays, you have, to me, two distinct approaches you can take on a Monday. Coming off a game, coming off a weekend, dealing with high school kids. You can treat Monday as a game plan install day. And if you do that, you better be prepared for Mondays to look sloppy. You better be prepared for Mondays to be slower. But if that's your plan, then so be it. Everybody has to buy into that's the plan. Or you can take Mondays as a day where it's only corrections and you're only working your stuff against, your stuff. So best on best, your offense against your defense. And then, Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll get into more of the game planning stuff. If you do that, I think you're going to look at feeling a lot better about your Monday practices, as far as the tempo, as far as the pace, as far as the execution of assignments. But you're not into the game plan yet, right? So now you're a day removed from getting into a game plan. If you do treat Mondays, and this is from a head coaching experience and a coordinator's experience, if you treat Mondays as an install day, you better put it in the back of your mind that Mondays could be sluggish. They could be slower. They could be sloppy, because obviously if you're installing some things on a Monday that kids haven't done, or you're trying to, change pressures or coverages, or you're trying to line up to formations that are new, then you just have to go out and know that Monday is going to be that way. Now, that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean the effort is that way. You still need the kids to be high energy. You still need to be moving around. But the thinking, a lot of times, is what leads to sloppy play, what leads to sloppy practices. So if a Monday has a lot of thinking involved, you just have to understand as a coach that those are going to be that way. And then you clean it up on Tuesday, Wednesday, and you move forward from there. And a lot of people choose to do it that way because you need that extra day of install or game plan, or, developing the game plan, which is fine. But I just think, from my experience, you have to buy into the fact that Monday's going to be a struggle. Monday's going to be a tough day, and you can't judge your team or your, success that week off that Monday practice. If you do that, then it's just going to lead to every Monday afternoon after practice being miserable, thinking that your team's not very good, thinking that you're not going to be able to win. And I think if you buy into that and you understand that, you'll save yourself a little bit of, time and energy worrying about how that Monday practice went. If you want Mondays to be clean and you want Mondays to start the week off, an up tempo, high effort, clean practice, then don't install a ton of stuff on Monday. Get out there and work your base stuff. The best we've ever done on Mondays is when we don't even look at opponents. We fix our stuff from Friday night, and then our periods are our offense against our defense, and repping things that we do, and offenses repping things that they do, and then we get into the game plan on Tuesday. That's to me the cleanest way to start a week. But if you start the week that way, now you're down a day in your game plan stuff. So if you feel like your game plan is going to be, more multiple, or it's going to have more nuances to it, I don't think you want to lose a day in the game plan. So you got to kind of match, to me, the mental state philosophically of how you're going to feel on a Monday based on what you're trying to get done, if that makes sense. So, but those are things that a lot of people, like I said, I think when we think about coaching and coordinating, I think we think so much about X's and O's and scheme that we don't actually think about the flow of practice and what a practice feels like and what it looks like and what is our mental makeup as a coach going to be on Monday afternoon. So I think determining how you choose to practice on a Monday should, at least in your own mind, set up with how you're going to feel. And if it's going to be heavy install and you're throwing a lot at the kids and then you're going to pull back throughout the week, well, then you should be fine with that. If you're expecting Mondays to be clean and you're expecting Mondays to be a lot of energy and a lot of tempo, then I would personally cut out a lot of the install game plan stuff on Mondays, and I would just rip through our stuff that we know how to do if you want it to be that clean. So, those are all parts of how you practice. There's no set way to do it. Everybody does it a different way. You've got to do it the way that you feel best. You've got to do it the way that your coaching staff can get it done. You got to do it based on what you think your players can do. But that's the beauty in football. There's no set way to do it. There's no one way that says, hey, I think what we all do is we all look at successful teams and we say, hey, all right, what does your practice week look like? And then we try to build off that, right? We try to take a template and we try to study success and we try to study successful people. And then we try to take that template and see if we can implement it. But every school's different. Every program's different. Every coaching staff is different. Every group of kids is different. So, I think we did it actually this year. We did it week to week. We did it based on what we felt like we needed. And, there were some weeks where Monday was trying to be as clean as possible and there's no install. And we're trying to get out there and rip our stuff against our stuff and trying to, keep it as a day where it's going to be positive mentally. And when we did that, we were a lot more physical on Mondays and then we backed down on Tuesdays. So, I think there's several different ways to do it. You got to figure out what works for you, and you got to figure out your mental state as a coach and what you can handle on a Monday. That's not going to completely freak you out for the rest of the week. And then the rest of the week's got to tie into that, right? So if you're, heavy game plan install on Monday, throw a bunch at the kids and they're going to be swimming a little bit, but then you're going to dial it back a little. And then by Wednesday, they've got it. Well, then that's one way to approach it, right? If you're going to come out on a Monday and try and be clean and not install, well, then, Tuesday, Wednesday, you got to be careful how much you throw at them because you've lost a day in the install. And now if they start swimming, it's hard to pull the reins back on that when it's a Wednesday. So, several different ways to do it, several philosophies, several different styles of how you do it. And you just got to find what fits for you. Right. So, I think it's obviously Thanksgiving week. It's a time to be grateful. It's a holiday, but it's one of the biggest football weeks of the year. So many, college rivalries and college games, and now the playoff system and games that are going to have a huge impact on the playoff system. And now how the playoff system shakes out. And now you got all these arguments about teams that may not want to be in the championship game because they think it can only hurt, with a 12-team system. So I think this time of year, it's a great football time. If you're still playing like we are, then obviously you're still working, you're still grinding. If you're out, then obviously you're probably working on next year already. You're obviously working on where you're getting your information and your knowledge from, where you're trying to grow, where you're trying to get better. So this time of year is different for a lot of people, but at the same time, it's everybody has the place that they're at with their program and with their coaching season. And, we're all somewhere, right? We're all we're still in it and we're trying to survive, with a game plan week to week, or we're in full off-season mode and we're trying to figure out our personnel and who returns and schemes that fit our personnel, how we can, tweak our schemes. And the off-season for me is always, as much as I love competing, as much as I love game planning and calling games on Friday night, the off-season to me is also, you know, it's a time for me, to develop. It's a time for me to get better. It's a time for me to learn. And you don't have that time, in season, right? You're not really going out and trying to learn a lot of new things in season because you probably can't get them done. So, the off season becomes that time of year that's exciting, at least for me. I know, it's not the practices, it's not the game plans, it's not the Friday night atmosphere, but at the same time, it's you growing as a coach. It's you trying to get better, as a coach. It's you trying to learn your program and figure out how your program is going to go to the next level. So, it's also exciting for me in the platform that we have that I get to do more. I get to do more videos. I get to do more things live. I get to share information more. And I get to talk to people about what they're doing. I get to talk to people about, hey, how you handling this? How you handling that? What did you guys play this year? What was good for you? If there's something I want to learn, I get to go out and find who's really good at it and go, hey, I think we're going to be 4 down. Let me go find the best 4 down team I can find. Hey, I think we're going to be 1 high. Let me go find the best 1 high team I can find. So, again, this time of year, you need to be thankful. Obviously, we got a holiday coming up. You need to recharge the batteries a little bit, spend some time doing the things that you want to do, get some rest if you can, and go from there. So I appreciate everybody for being here tonight. Malcolm, thank you so much for the generous donation. I appreciate everything you guys do for PlayFest, being here for over an hour on a Tuesday night and listening to us talk some different things about football and, our football, college football, NFL football, whatever it may be. As always, if you have a specific topic or something you want to address, you can email me. It's Sting, STING 8740 @gmail.com. Coach Mac 8740 on Twitter. I'll respond to any messages on YouTube videos that I can respond to. I already had somebody send me a message today off the short we did, asking me if I can do a video on some of the 3 high variations that I like and why I said that I think 3 high is, a better coverage for variation. So as soon as I get time, I'm going to start cranking those videos out, more and more. It's tougher for me to do them in season, especially when we're still playing. But off season becomes video time. It becomes, more play fast orientated. So again, appreciate all you guys being here for over an hour on a Tuesday. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. Thanks for taking time out of your holiday week. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. I hope everybody's healthy. I hope you get a chance to recharge, enjoy yourself, enjoy the great football that's going to happen this weekend. And to anybody that's still playing, good luck to you. Unless you're the team that we're playing, then hopefully we come out on top. But good luck to everybody out there that's still doing it. Hopefully you keep winning until you can't win anymore. But thanks for being here. Thanks for coming on live. Remember, you won't play well until you play fast. I will see every one of you next time.